The box art for Pokemon Snap is pretty brilliant. It showcases a bunch of Pokemon, it has a camera lens in the middle of the frame, and the box takes the shape of the iconic Pokeball. Most importantly, it tells the player exactly what the game is about: taking pictures. Though at first glance, this is a pretty boring concept for a video game. It's not like first-person games were novel by 1999. Doom had been out for 6 years, and GoldenEye 007, a killer app for the Nintendo 64, had been out for 2. The act of just looking at Pokemon and taking pictures isn't a terribly exciting concept for a game. But Pokemon Snap is actually pretty fun and unique. Lifted up by the popularity of the Pokemon franchise, Pokemon Snap is a satisfying safari filled with secrets and objectives. It's an interesting dive into the world of Pokemon that expands the series' appeal beyond just catching and battling. It's an exploration of the possibilities of the franchise. What interests me about Pokemon Snap is not that it's a game about taking pictures, or that it completely fails in figuring out what a good picture actually is, or that we could even describe it as a Pokemon first-person shooter. Nah, what interests me about Pokemon Snap is how it displays that even games in completely new genres still borrow a lot of their core ideas from what came before them. In this video, I'd like to show how we can see shades of the mainline Pokemon games in Pokemon Snap, and how the game relates to early text-based games like Colossal Cave Adventure. In order to understand Pokemon Snap, we have to understand the broader appeal of the Pokemon series. While I'm sure that every Pokefan has their own reasons for enjoying the series, I feel we can divide the primary ludic or gameplay appeals of Pokemon into a few broad categories: pet ownership, progression forward, exploration, and a desire to collect. 2 or 3 of these appeals can be found in the game's excellent catchphrase, "Gotta catch 'em all." First, the player needs to catch Pokemon, turn them into their battle companions or pets. As evidenced by my obsession as a youth with Pokemon, Digimon, Metabots, Neopets, and a whole host of other pet collection games, there is a great joy in the fantasy of having unique and interesting creatures at your behest. Almost everyone I know has a favorite Pokemon, one that speaks to them. Beyond that, it is easy to find the critters cute, and that compels the player to want to look after and catch each Pokemon, make them theirs. The second thing to note here is that the player needs to catch them all. This feeds into both the collection and exploration aspects of the mainline games. Collection, obviously, because the player is challenged to collect every single Pokemon out there. But also exploration because it teases the player with a vast open world filled with Pokemon to catch and train. Of course, these Pokemon need a use. So in these games, they are put to battle against each other to keep the game moving forward as a continual challenge for the player to face with their pets. The most obvious way these challenges are structured are in gym battles, which act as barriers to progression until the player can demonstrate a certain level of skill with their Pokemon. Pokemon Snap, perhaps unsurprisingly, replicates all 4 of these appeals in its game design. The biggest departure from the rest of the Pokemon series is that you don't catch Pokemon in Pokemon Snap. You capture their essence in photographic form. While the game discards the battles and the pet ownership that the series is known for, there is still a certain sense of ownership and flair in the taking of photographs. To some degree, every photograph is unique to the person who took it, a summation of their efforts and talents. When playing Pokemon Snap, there are many opportunities to capture seemingly emergent photographs, especially because the player is not on an idle safari. They can interact with Pokemon by pestering them, playing the flute for them, or luring them closer with apples. While they are certainly different experiences, I find that taking pictures is a lot more like catching and raising Pokemon than one might expect based on the initial premise. Despite being a game literally on rails, Pokemon Snap does manage to capture a sense of exploration and wonder similar to the series' mainline games. The primary way it accomplishes this is through the plethora of secrets and events the player can instigate and discover. A simple example of this is at the start of the river level, where within 15 seconds there are 2 secrets to uncover. The first is the Poliwags jumping up and down on the side of the course. These tadpoles jump up and down behind foliage, making getting their picture tough. But if one throws Pesser balls at them, they will run forward and jump into the river, generating a good shot. This shows how the player can interact with the environment to uncover secrets. A little further on, there's a Bulbasaur hiding in a stump, barely visible. But if one tosses an apple at it, another Bulbasaur will come out from hiding and dance. This again suggests how the player uncovers the environment's secrets. These examples are pretty mundane, but perhaps the most loving part of Pokemon Snap is this attention to detail regarding the secrets, which can be found in spades across the game and keep it feeling fresh, even as the player needs to retry the same courses over and over again. While the mainline Pokemon games have plenty of challenges such as gym leaders, Team Rocket, the Elite Four are your rival, the primary conflict in Pokemon Snap is centered around good photography. Professor Oak rates the player's photographs and typically blocks progress on 2 axes: the amount of Pokemon the player has taken pictures of and the amount of points they've gotten from those pictures. These barriers add a new dimension to the game and force the player to replay levels with a specific goal in mind. Perhaps the player needs to find Pokemon that have up to now been hidden from them, or they just need to snap better pictures of the ones they've already got. There can be frustration in these progression gates for sure, especially when a particular Pokemon to discover is at the end of a level and failure to get it right means restarting the whole level to get back to that point. But overall, the progression system in Pokemon Snap works kind of like a Metroidvania, where unlocking new abilities makes the player reflect on past levels and how those new items might be used to find new Pokemon or take better pictures. As the player progresses through the game, they slowly but surely collect a lot of pictures of Pokemon. What I love about these pictures is how they tell a story. They archive that particular run through the level. My favorite picture I took back in the 90s and today was of these Charmanders celebrating and fighting over an apple. Just like the mainline games, the more one plays Pokemon Snap, the more they collect pieces of the game as their own. Especially towards the end of the game, the question becomes, which Pokemon have I yet to take a picture of? In some ways, it's more humane than the mainline Pokemon games, because you aren't capturing and enslaving Pokemon to battle others endlessly, but just taking a photograph and adding it to your collection like someone might collect stamps or coins. Either way, the more one plays Pokemon Snap, the more they collect Pokemon, just like the main series. Honestly, I'm kind of astonished how well Nintendo was able to smash together the Pokemon formula and a camera game. It's just generally a pretty brilliant idea that is genuinely well executed and clearly fills some of the same emotional desires as the rest of the series. But I also think it takes a cue from another type of game. While we can draw comparisons to the original Pokemon games, Pokemon Snap is chiefly a game about finding secrets, interacting with the world, and documenting that interaction. It's an exploration game, even if that exploration is locked on rails. But do you know what other games are similarly locked on rails? Text-based games, like Colossal Cave Adventure. At first blush, this comparison probably seems weird to you. What does a text adventure about exploring a massive cave system have to do with a game about taking pictures of Pokemon? Surprisingly, quite a bit. Let's first talk about Colossal Cave Adventure, and then we'll see what Pokemon Snap, and to some degree all games, borrow from the original text-based adventure game. Colossal Cave Adventure was developed by Will Crowther and Don Woods between 1975 and 1977, though it has kind of changed a lot over the years. In it, the player explores a massive cave structure, all described through text. As one of the first narrative video games, Colossal Cave Adventure was truly a breakthrough for the medium. It is a vast world to explore and secrets to uncover, not dissimilar from Pokemon Snap. While exploring its caves, the player finds danger and treasure, with a goal of getting as many points as possible for what they find. Again, this is not too dissimilar from the points one earns for good photographs from Pokemon Snap. As the player explores these caves, they must use their items and smarts to discover what secrets lie within them. Again, this should sound familiar. I don't know if those at Nintendo developing Pokemon Snap specifically played Colossal Cave Adventure, and as we'll see, many games borrow from this kind of formula, but my point here is that the same kind of playful intrigue and joy are present in both Pokemon Snap and Colossal Cave Adventure. They are both adventures with a limited amount of options where the player sits on the rails of the game and works within them in order to achieve a high score. Nick Montfort explores games like Colossal Cave Adventure in his book Twisty Little Passages. Montfort explains that the most direct counterpoint to interactive fiction in oral and written literature is seen in the riddle. By presenting a metaphorical system that the listener or reader must inhabit and figure out in order to fully experience and in order to answer correctly, the riddle offers its way of thinking and engages its audience as no other work of literature does. Both Colossal Cave Adventure and Pokemon Snap are riddle-like games. They require the user to try out different things in order to proceed, with often one particular strain of correct actions needed to unlock progress. To varying degrees, of course, the player needs to inhabit and figure out these riddles in order to fully experience the game. Montfort argues that the player of these kind of games is like a reader and writer, because they contribute writing that is part of the text and serves to operate the program. As readers and writers, the player explores both these games' many twisty little passages, uncovering different aspects of the riddle, whether that be new creatures to capture on film in Pokemon Snap, or new treasures to take in Colossal Cave Adventure. Each discovery is the player reading the game, and each act is them writing upon it. In this way, the player is always changing the game as they play it. Both Colossal Cave Adventure and Pokemon Snap may be about twisty little passages that the player heads down to discover new possibilities, but the way they move through those spaces is different. Whereas in a text-based adventure, the player chooses directions in a pre-built world like Go North, Pokemon Snap has less player agency in the act of movement, and more contingency in the act of taking photographs or throwing apples. Each photograph one takes, every apple or pester ball they throw, is a performative act which loosely changes the world around the player. Importantly, for both Colossal Cave Adventure and Pokemon Snap, their vastness is mostly an illusion. Whether in the text descriptions of the former or the visual landscapes of the latter, these worlds are a lot smaller than they appear. If we were to zoom out from them and see them from a distance, as a map, rather than from the perspective as a player, they would seem very small. But isn't this the case with all riddles? Once one knows the answer, they seem small, easy to understand. These games are no different. The more one knows how to uncover all their secrets, the smaller their worlds become. Even the most vast game worlds, like Red Dead Redemption, World of Warcraft, or Grand Theft Auto, are riddle-like in their construction. The more we play them, the more we inhabit their worlds, the more we discover their secrets, the less wide they are in our imaginations. Some games can't even be returned to because of this feature of their environments. For instance, one of my favorite games of all time is The Outer Wilds. If I ever make a video about that game, it'll probably be very long and won't come out for a long time. The Outer Wilds contains a huge open solar system to explore and a ton of player-directed possibilities. But the only way to solve its clockwork mechanisms is to solve its riddle, to make its world smaller through the act of understanding. All games are like this. All films are like this. All stories are like this. We trace their maps in our minds. We learn their systems, and they unravel in front of us, like a solved riddle. We can add on to that riddle in a lot of ways. For instance, adding other players makes competitive games almost endlessly entertaining. We can even procedurally generate worlds. Still, there's a distinctly human compulsion to understand, to track the line of the game and understand it. For a game like Pokemon Snap, eventually all those secrets are uncovered, all the best pictures have been shot, every area has been explored, and then it is only if we can make new games out of its code that it can remain fun. This is not a flaw. It is the line on which games hook us and keep us engaged. It's the same way that riddles keep us hooked. That is, until we solve them. Hi, this is my cat Cleo. If you want to subscribe to her left or watch the video to her right. But yeah, she loves you and she loves me too. Have a great day.